Well, good afternoon. Today is February the 7th, 2023. This morning I had some computer issues, so that's why I'm recording later this afternoon. And I actually have a special guest with me this afternoon, Ryan Jackson, another member of the Alliance, and someone that I got to spend some time with in Vegas at the Elite Millionaires course. Ryan and I have got to spend some time going through the laws last year with the clubhouse, and I know he now works closely with still promoting the laws on Zoom and some other stuff with Aaron Ellis and also Otis, talking about the laws as Ryan and Otis and several other people are veterans. They get together and they have the Alliance for Veterans get it coming together. But today is the fifth part of how I'm showing how the laws are connected. Originally, we looked at the first law, and the first law is the law of the architect. And in the law of the architect, it's really, really critical that we discover and find what we are the architect of, what our skills are, passions are, that we can, hopefully create our generational wealth with. And then we looked at the law of exchange. The law of exchange, I think, is a really good stepping stone for the law of separation, because as the architect, you are not able to do everything. And I know Ryan is just a new franchise owner, and he's learning the law of the architect and well as the law of exchange. But he's also probably living this law every day, just not maybe thinking about it. Maybe he is the law of separation. But, law of exchange is how we are able to create value for other people that can, generate value for us. And whether that's just a partial exchange or a fair exchange or an abundance exchange, we try not to create a criminal exchange as we are in the Alliance. Then we looked at the law of open cycles, the principle of present, and as we now are at the law of separation. And I've always alluded to, when doing these laws, I said, imagine a dream catcher. And the law of the architect is that outer ring. And it's that foundation, it's that anchor point that we look at for all these other laws to tie together. And then we're pulling from one side to the other, the law of exchange, law of open cycles. And this is a filter. So if you've seen a dream catcher, or if you haven't, Google one. But think about running through life and having that in front of you, because your dreams, your goals, your aspirations are what is going to stick to that web of the dream catcher. But these laws help create that web. And there's a lot of open space. So there's a lot of things that can pass through, which is, I think, very, very critical for the law of separation. I really, really like this law. And as I've always done in the past, I don't read them. I don't go through them verbatim, but I kind of highlight them and how they align with each other laws and how they build upon each other to create value as we go through this journey of creating generational wealth for ourselves and our families. But with the law of separation, I think it's very, very critical as the architect, going back to what our anchor point is you have to be able to separate yourself from your goals and your vision, because they might align and might be taking you down the same path. But your goals are, I think I would like to say, they're daily. You have daily goals, daily aspirations that help you achieve your vision. But as you achieve certain goals, it's going to allow you to, build upon that and, separate off a little bit at a time and then learn how to create that exchange. So when you're looking at this here, you have to be fundamentally sound and be able to learn from each opportunity that you're presented with, but also not only the opportunities of growth and success, but where failure happens. And a lot of people, they look at failure and say, that's a bad word, it's a 4-letter word. Obviously, failure is not a 4-letter word, but a lot of people look at it and say, I don't want to have failure in my life. But if you have failure, more often than not, you're going to learn something. Your successes, most people will not go back and do an autopsy on their successes. They'll do an autopsy on their failures. So when you're able to separate these different things, it's allowing you to grow and build these different things out. But it also allows you to create this separation of what you really need to be focusing on as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a W-2 employee, whatever that may look like, because this is a ongoing journey. And in this journey, it's a impact that we're looking to create not only for our families, but those that we surround ourselves with. One of the things that was mentioned in the laws is, formulating a strategy that would, correct current behavior or that was negative. But if you can do that in, formulating or, figure out the strategy of where things happen, whether your team, because as I've alluded to on the past recordings, is I'm not a CPA, I'm not a marketing person, even though I have a degree in marketing. It's not my skill, it's not my passion. It's just something I know, but I barter with someone else's time to help me with these things. But where can I create those separations in this so I can move forward faster? And this right here, in knowing that law of exchange and separating out these tasks as you're the visionary, the vision caster of this, it's the value that you're able to present to those that you've created this exchange with, and then knowing where your open cycles lie, and then be able to separate each one of these different categories out. But because you are the architect, you still need to oversee them and try to figure out how it's best benefiting your business and moving forward. But as you separate from CPA to marketing, you have to really disconnect. You cannot be thinking about your last conversation. You have to come in, as we discussed last week, the principle of present. And I think with all of these things right now, you can see that the building upon one another. And if you carry over your past, your fears, or your anxieties of different things, it will weigh on your decision making as you're moving forward. I know there's a lot to unpack in that, but that's what, for me, the law of separation is. I mean, if you go through the law and you hear the law and you see the story, it gives a great analogy. But when you're looking at it holistically with everything else, you have to really separate in each one of these moments to be fully present as a entrepreneur, as a leader, and also as a student. We hear Dan talk about having our humility always trump our ability. And if we have our ability trumping our humility, it doesn't lay out well for us because we're not able to separate, because we think we can do everything. But I think those that are truly humble and can really bring forth value are the ones that say, I cannot do everything, but I can be present in these moments, and I can create a vision where I can create an exchange, but also know that when I'm sitting down with each person, it's allowing me to be fully present in those moments and separate anything from the past and things that I'm looking at in the future, but stay right there in that moment. And with this here, if you have this mindset, it's something that you can do on a daily basis. We don't want to open up a lot of open cycles, but the law of separation, you can say, all right, my goals today are, I want to make 20 phone calls. I want to send 50 emails, and I want to do all that by 10 a.m. And let's say you wake up at, 8 a.m. So you got 2 hours to do these things. But if you're separating yourself from all the other tasks, all the other noise that can affect you, the fires that are always around, you're going to find yourself able to achieve more and go further than others, because you are separating your time into an area that allows you to be fully focused, fully present, to stay in that. And then again, as we looked at with law of open cycles, we're staying in that moment and separating these different things and creating these monumental tasks. Last night, we had the benefit of having the monthly call, and Dan talked about, spending, 5, 10, 15 hours a week on these monumental goals, or a month. And it's within those goals, if you set forth these landmark goals where you're not shooting for the moon, but you're shooting for the outer atmosphere, if you're shooting for the outer atmosphere, you're going to hit the moon. But you have to know where the separation lies and, when to put time into those tasks so you can be meticulous and have the forethought and put forth the team and ideas around you to grow forward. But I'm going to pause real quick because I am honored to have Ryan here, and this was a kind of a last minute thing, so I kind of threw him in here. So, Ryan, what's your thoughts on the law of separation?
I think it's an important one, obviously, kind of like what you described with your dream catcher, which I like that analogy. You know, this is another law is very important for the architect to make sure that you're not getting caught up in changing your vision and changing the goals that you have set for that time period. Um, and then, because if you get caught into the action steps of the strategy and you lose sight of the vision and the goals, you may end up changing your strategies too quickly, which would violate, the data you need to acquire. But also don't change your vision or your goals to match how your strategy is turning out. So keep those things fixed and then adjust your strategies at the appropriate time once you have enough data to do so.
Yeah. Well, and it is that because as a lot of people, and I think this is where some people as a whole struggle as the architect. Your goal is to have that vision and cast that vision out so you can build a team around you that says, yes, I see the vision. I want to be a part of this because I know it's going to be life changing, whether it be for the masses of the population or whether it be due to a financial windfall, whatever it may be. It's going to be to something that gets other people excited to be a part of that. But that vision has to stay clear. Now, the journey to achieve that vision, and as we get into the laws, we'll see the law of the two rabbits and the law of the caterpillar and different things. But what are these different steps? And as you said, when we've all faced adversity, we've all faced obstacles, but as an entrepreneur, we have to adapt and overcome. But we don't, just because we have to adapt doesn't mean we change our perspective on our vision. It just says, all right, well, I did not see this coming. I need to plan for this because this may populate later on down the road or for someone else. And that's where you're able to build strength and resiliency in your vision because you can say, as you're working with people, hey, we've experienced this here. Let's keep moving forward because some people are afraid to move forward because they haven't experienced it. Their fears are predicated on what they haven't experienced. But if you've experienced it, you can separate and say, hey, this is what has happened in the past. We're going to keep moving forward and give them that confidence to move forward. But it's also to say, if things do arise and we do have to adapt, we will adapt as a company, we will adapt as a team and overcome it and not just rest and say, oh, woe is me, which I think is a great place where you have a leader that has confidence that says, no matter the trials and tribulations that come, it allows us to have the data or set points of things that are could be viewed as negative, but just obstacles that we've overcome. And those obstacles that I've overcome is where people tend to gravitate to others because they're trying to move through this journey of life, this journey of generational wealth by mimicking or following the footsteps of others. And I think this is the law of separation, is separating your past from your present. And that's what this law stands for me, is separating that past from your present, because again, we are predicated on our fears and what has occurred to us in the past. But we cannot allow those things to hold us back. We can allow those to be warning or, signs or guardrails for us not to go too far off the path, but it allows us to really move forward with a sense of vigor, a sense of pace, and wanting to get things done. Um, but the law of separation is one that we have to constantly look at and say, how are we going to continue to build the experience for the team? And how are we going to work with each team member and separate and be fully present with them so we can help make sure that our vision is aligning with the task that they're at hand with, but be able to move succinctly from one silo to another. And I think that's a critical but a challenging thing to do, especially if you're not anchored with the law of the architect. And these laws are in an order for a reason. And I think, as I've always said, the law of the architect has to be your anchor point. If you do not know what you're the visionary of, what you're going after, everything else just kind of falls apart. And it was something that Dan said last night, and it's kind of escaped me. So, but it was, we can't go from level 7 to level 37 and with the same metrics. And that's a law of separation right there, because if we're carrying what made us successful to get to level 7 will not make us successful to get to level 37. And because you have to constantly build and you have to separate yourself from those successes and also those failures to keep moving forward. And with that, I think is, a powerful statement itself, because as we scale, our mindset has to shift, and the mindset not only for the architect, but the mindset for the team that the architect has put around him, and while we're creating that law of exchange. And these are all things that you have to work on a daily basis. Now, this one here, I don't say is one of my favorite laws, but it is something that I have to constantly remind myself of. But this one right here, when I think of the law of separation, I think of the principle of present, and then also the principle of perseverance. So those two laws right there are the two principles inherently tie back into me for this particular law. And I think it's going to be more apparent as we go through the laws in the week 6 through 10, as we, finish out this on the second week of March. But, I'm excited to have this journey with everyone. I hope, everyone enjoys the recording today. I know it's going to be a little bit shorter. It's going to be in that 20-30 minute range as opposed to the hour recording. But having Ryan's insights is, great. And it's also one of those things that my perspective is only my perspective. Ryan has another perspective. He's had more journeys in his life than maybe I have. But he's able to see things differently. But when you're able to share perspectives or get different perspectives on your vision, it can really allow you to grow. And I want to say thank you to Ryan for taking a little bit of time out of his day to join us. And maybe y'all reach out to Ryan on the WhatsApp or LinkedIn or Facebook, because he's a wealth of knowledge. So, but Ryan, you got any closing thoughts for us?
Sorry, Chris Matters just called me, so I had to mute Chris. So I'll call him back.
Okay.
No, but I do kind of like how you compared Dan's analogy from last night about you start out on the 7th floor and then your knowledge level is taken up to the the 25th floor, or whatever floor you want to say, because you've received that education. And it kind of ties into this because he was saying that you can't be using the same metric, otherwise you'll never get off the elevator onto that 25th floor because you're still operating on the 7th floor. And I never really thought about it until you brought it up that maybe it's not you necessarily have to change your strategies, but if you're thinking at the 25th level and you're changing your metrics now, you may be able to use the same strategies. You're just going to analyze them differently based upon the metrics, but it may also be time to change your strategies because you're on the 25th floor now. That being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that your vision or goals change. So I'd be very careful about that. I don't think that we can say your vision will never change. I think it will grow and develop as you grow and develop as a person, and you become a little bit more wise and educated. But I do like that analogy, and that's something to think about more. And just for everybody's essays, situational awareness. Sorry, I was a military comm brevity there saying essay. But for everybody's situational awareness, I mean, when you start getting to the later laws, and that's where you really start talking about collecting data and not being too quick to act on data until you have a good data set, because then you're not sure if it's the result is a correlation or a causation. But I encourage everybody as they go through the journey and you get in these later laws, go back and revisit, do it by teaching other people the laws who are just coming in, because you will see the laws in a whole nother light, even a year down the road. And I imagine 5 years down the road, it's going to be, completely different for myself and Matt as we continue to grow and develop and learn more from our own law, execution of the law of discovery, as well as talking with other members of Bellwether and growing our perspectives and viewpoints.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, just to find out, because our education changes through the laws and through our perspectives of having conversations with other people. And I want you to go back and listen to a law after you've listened to this, but the laws, please go back and refer to more than these recordings that I do. But there is in this law, they talk about the 6th or 7th iteration. And I can't remember if it's in this particular law, but they talk about, I know Dan's talked about it, is, 7-Up. The guy came, worked on it, had 6 different formulas and just garbage, and he sold it. And then they changed it, tweaked it, and then 7-Up became 7-Up. And, here we are. So just because you change or have a hiccup, you can always articulate and move positions around. And as Ryan talked about, going into the later laws and coming back to these things here, like I hear this law and I think of the 6th to 7th iteration, I immediately go to the law of the lock. And you may not be there yet, but it is something that's critical in our knowledge, in our thought process as we continue to build, because there are 53 to 52 laws, 50 in this 52 laws. But imagine this dream catcher, and we're just going through the first 10. This is for me to give everyone that's going through this journey with me the opportunity to draw their own conclusions with the laws and how they build upon each other. But as you're building this Dreamweaver with 53 different strands, pulling it apart, you're going to have a lot of surface area there where your dreams can be there, or we're going to be present in the moment and have a conversation with someone like Ryan Jackson or Chris Matters or Aaron Ellis or Dan Vega or someone else in the alliance to go, oh my God, you may not creating a law of creating an exchange, but because you're present, you're able to draw something, you're able to pick up on something on the knowledge base that will allow you to be fundamentally better as you continue to progress up this elevator, like Dan talked about last night. And for those that are listening to this within, by the 14th, you're going to, hopefully you're on the law, this call last night, and this is going to resonate with you, and how there was a lot of correlation. And Dan talked about the laws, and this is my way to help enrich the almoners and give them a path that allows them to take the laws in to discover their own path into becoming a Maven or a Gentry class, but primarily just to know these fundamental laws that are going to help you make better decisions when it comes to your business and your goals. But, with that being said, I want to say thank you to Ryan for taking a little bit of time out of your day today to join us as a special guest. And for those that watch the recording, thank you for watching it. And we will see you back here next Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern time, all things. If we don't have any more hiccups with the internet, but we'll see you on Valentine's Day. But thank you so much, and we will see you then.